Hey everyone, let's jump right in. Today's explainer is diving into a subject that is honestly just as visually stunning as it is incredibly urgent. We're talking about the biological mechanics and the truly massive global stakes of coral bleaching. If you've ever scrolled past photos of those vibrant coral reefs and wondered, what exactly is going on beneath the surface when those beautiful colors just completely fade away, well, you're in the exact right place. We're going to break down the science, the environmental triggers, and the human impacts straight from the latest source material. So let's get into it.
So think about this for a second. What actually happens when the ocean's most colorful ecosystems go completely white? We are so used to associating coral reefs with this brilliant kaleidoscope of colors, right? Vibrant pinks, deep blues, electric greens. But increasingly, these ecosystems are turning completely, hauntingly white. It's a phenomenon known as coral bleaching. Now, it's pretty easy to look at a white reef and just think, oh, it's just a change in the scenery. But this visual shift, it's actually a desperate distress signal from the ecosystem itself. It is literally an alarm bell ringing underwater. And to understand exactly why that bell is ringing, we have to look closer. Much, much closer.
All right, Section 1, Anatomy of a Bleaching Event, or the micro-level breakup.
Okay, so to really get how bleaching works, you first have to understand the single most important relationship on the reef, zooxanthellae. It's definitely a mouthful, I know, but it's absolutely vital. These are tiny algae that actually live inside the tissues of the coral. Think of it kind of like the ultimate roommate agreement. The coral provides a super safe home, a protected environment for the algae to just hang out and live in. And in exchange, these algae work overtime. Through photosynthesis, they provide a massive share of the coral's food and energy. Plus, as a beautiful bonus, they give the coral its incredible color. So they're basically the engine and the paint job of the reef, all wrapped into one. But what happens when that perfect living arrangement gets stressed out? Let's walk through the exact biological sequence here. Step 1, elevated temperatures hit the reef. What's really interesting about this is how heat stress totally disrupts that roommate balance. When the water gets too warm, the relationship just completely breaks down. The coral, in this sort of panic survival response, actually kicks the algae right out of its tissues. That's step 2. And step 3 is the devastating consequence: coral starvation. Without those algae partners, the corals lose their color. Well, actually, worse than just losing their color, they lose their main source of energy. They become incredibly vulnerable to disease and really struggle to survive.
Now, I want to pause here because there's a huge misconception we need to clear up right now. Bleaching does not always mean immediate death. Let me explicitly debunk that myth. A bleached coral is starving and sick, yes, for sure, but it is still alive. If temperatures fall back down and the environmental conditions improve quickly enough, the coral can actually regain its algae. It can welcome those roommates back and recover partially or even fully. And that gives us a really crucial glimmer of hope. It's a warning system, not an automatic death sentence.
Moving on to Section 2, what causes the breakup? Let's look at the macro triggers. So, what's the main culprit pushing these corals over the edge? The primary driver is sustained ocean warming. While bleaching can totally happen naturally after short-term environmental shifts, recent decades have shown us this dramatic, scary increase in really frequent, widespread bleaching events. And the sources point super clearly to the root cause here: human-driven climate change. This sustained warming of our oceans is simply pushing these delicate corals way beyond their natural heat tolerance. It's essentially raising the baseline temperature of their home to a level they just aren't evolved to handle.
But here's the thing. Ocean warming isn't working alone. Local issues are severely compounding this global problem. We've got a whole list of secondary stressors that just make things so much worse. We've got pollution, which directly reduces water quality and sickens the coral. We have sediment runoff from the land, which actually clouds up the water and blocks the sunlight that those algae so desperately need to photosynthesize. Then there's overfishing that removes key species and destabilizes the whole reef ecosystem. Add in extreme weather events altering local conditions, and you've got a perfect storm. All of these local pressures basically lower the coral's immune system, making it so much harder for them to survive that primary threat of ocean warming.
That brings us to Section 3, the ripple effect, the global stakes.
Now you might be wondering, okay, why does this matter to us? If you live hundreds or even thousands of miles from an ocean, you might think some microscopic algae leaving a coral has literally nothing to do with you. But we really need to shift our perspective right now toward the staggering human and economic impact of degrading reefs.
Let's break down exactly what reefs do for us. Simply put, reefs protect and provide. First off, they support extraordinary biodiversity, acting as a habitat and food source for countless marine species. But the crucial point is how this extends way beyond the ocean. Reefs act as these massive natural coastal buffers. They physically reduce wave energy and protect our shorelines from huge storms. Plus, they are the absolute foundations for global fisheries and tourism. They provide direct food security and sustain the livelihoods of millions of people in coastal communities all over the world. When reefs bleach severely or repeatedly, they lose their physical, structural complexity. They literally break down. And when they do, all of those immense benefits just vanish with them.
Which brings us to a really sobering reality. When bleaching causes that reef degradation, the impacts ripple directly through local economies and public health. I cannot emphasize the severity of this enough. We are directly connecting the loss of a microscopic, invisible algae to the survival, the bank accounts, and the dinner plates of entire communities. It's a massive chain reaction. No algae means no coral. No coral means no habitat for the fish. And no fish means collapsed local fisheries, lost tourism dollars, and an immediate severe threat to human food security.
All right, Section 4, the crossroads of recovery. Let's talk about the path forward.
Whether a reef bounces back really depends on a delicate balance. We're basically looking at two distinct paths here. Over on the side of recovery, if the heat stress is brief, if water quality stays good, and crucially, if there is sufficient time between these bleaching events, the corals can absolutely recover. But looking at the path of decline, if we see repeated heat stress, longer-lasting temperature extremes, and frequent events back-to-back, the corals just exhaust their energy reserves. They fail to regrow their algae, and the reef dies. It's literally a race against time and temperature.
So this is where action comes in. We can actually tip the scales toward recovery through immediate local management. We can actively work to reduce local pollution and improve water clarity so the corals aren't out there fighting a multi-front war. We can protect herbivorous fish, the fish that eat all the harmful competing seaweeds, to keep the reef nice and clean. And we can strengthen marine protected areas. These local conservation actions are incredibly vital. They basically act like a life support system, maximizing the survival chances for the reefs that still have a little bit of time to recover.
But we've got to be completely honest about the big picture here. The single most effective long-term solution is reducing greenhouse gas emissions, period. Local actions buy us time, and they are so important, but they simply cannot stop the entire ocean from warming. Today, scientists are using advanced satellite data and field surveys to track this heat stress across the globe. And all of the data points to the exact same conclusion. Limiting those marine heat waves by actively addressing global emissions is the ultimate necessity if we want long-term survival for coral reefs anywhere.
I want to leave you with a really powerful final thought, directly from our source material. As bleaching becomes more common, the stakes for ocean ecosystems and coastal communities continue to rise. This isn't just about losing some pretty colors in the water. It is about the very real rising stakes for life on this planet. So the next time you hear about ocean temperatures rising, remember the zooxanthellae. Remember those coastal communities. The choices we make about our environment right now will quite literally determine whether these vital ecosystems recover or just fade to white forever. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.